Thank you, Ed, for that introduction. It's my privilege to introduce Karl Rove. Karl's a very down-to-earth person. My impression is that what you see is what you get. How many of you have actually read Karl's book? Yeah? How many of you are planning on reading it? It's a great book. It's a great book. If you want to know the inside workings of a political campaign, if you want to know some of the inside workings of the Bush administration, if you want to know the Rovian principles of putting together a successful campaign, I do encourage you to read it. Fascinating reading. Karl's been described as by a respected author, Michael Barone, as unique. That can be good or bad. But he goes on to say, no presidential appointee has ever had such a strong influence on politics and policy, and none is likely to ever do so again. Fred Barnes, executive editor of the Weekly Standard, called him the greatest political mind of his generation, and probably of any generation. He knows history, he understands the needs of the public, and he's a visionary on matters of public policy. Karl served as the senior advisor to President George W. Bush from 2000 to 2007, and as deputy chief of staff from 2004 to 2007. At the White House, he oversaw the offices of strategic initiatives, political affairs, public liaison, and intergovernmental affairs, and was the deputy chief of staff for policy, coordinating the White House policymaking process. As a Fox News commentator and contributor, Karl provides a, quote, genuine feel of inside knowledge. I think you can agree that that's true. Even the New York Times acclaims, quote, Rove's substantive contributions may now inspire a little work ethic among the celebrity talking heads who may be forced to bring to the news a little more data and a little less opinion, a recalibration that be welcomed in its devoted viewers. Well said. Karl currently writes a weekly op-ed for the Wall Street Journal and is a Newsweek correspondent and the author of Courage and Consequence. Ladies and gentlemen, we're a nation under attack. As a free people, we have enemies outside of the nation who would like to see us humbled, who don't acknowledge or appreciate our standing as a free people. Even within, we're under attack from big government, a sagging economy, high unemployment, and even at the very top levels of government, individuals who do not believe in American exceptionalism. This is the time for patriots. This is a time for clear vision, for strong direction, for powerful initiatives, and for men and women who will stand for what makes America great. Please give us an upstanding welcome for Denver and Colorado native Karl Rove.
Thank you. Thank you. Sit down. Sit down. Sit down. Behave yourselves. You're Coloradans, not Texans. Michael, thank you for that very kind introduction. And I thought the most powerful part of it was when he wasn't talking about me. I think he's right. And tonight I want to talk about in my remarks about the fight that we're in, because I agree with them. We're under assault from abroad. They don't just want to humble us, they want to destroy our way of life. And our American values, the values of limited government, personal responsibility, and individual freedom are under assault here at home in a way that they haven't been for a long, long time, if forever. I want to thank the host committee for inviting me back to the city of my birth. Born at the same hospital as John Kerry. two paths diverged in a forest. Of course, you've all been to the place where I started to grow up, Kokomo, Colorado, the great metropolitan town that's no longer there. It's marked now by a little sign along the side of the road, north of the Climax Mine, that says, 1 mile west of here lay the town of Kokomo, site of the first Masonic Lodge in the territory of Colorado. Why they mention that I lived there, I don't know. Anyway, it's good to be back. I had a cup of coffee this afternoon with my nephew. I got aunts and uncles and nieces and nephews, even a sister, who are still here in Colorado, and it's always great to get back to the Mile High City. I want to thank both Ed and Michael for punching my book a little bit. They're right. About a week before I got the launch of the book on Matt Lauer on NBC, you know, the Today program, that's where we launched the book in early March. I got a note. In fact, I got a messenger appeared at my door. They didn't send it to me FedEx. A messenger appeared at my door, and I had to sign for it. They wouldn't let anybody else take the package except me, and there was a copy of my book, first copy of the book. Spent a year and a half writing it. You know, when you're writing a book, you tend to get into the detail of what paragraph and this word or that word, and you sort of lose the big picture. So they sent me a copy of the book with a letter. They said, you need to read this book before you go on Today program with Matt Lauer. Might remind you of what you said, just refresh your memory. Do this before you go on with Matt Lauer, who's a nice guy, but a tiny little guy. Not this tall, tiny little hands, tiny little feet, clad in tiny little Italian leather shoes. But it said, read it before you go on. So I did it. I sat down it was like a Tuesday, and I sat down on Tuesday night and Wednesday and read it. And I got to tell you, it's a damn good read. Closed it up and said, thank God for editors. Anyway, enough of the book. I want to talk tonight about things here at home. I think Michael's right about the international front, but let's set that aside and maybe talk about it in Q&A. Let's talk about the things here at home. The things here at home that are the big dividing points in this Congress and in this election, and will be, I think, for the next several years, the big dividing points in America. But first of all, let's step back. How did we get here? We really are in an unusual place. You know, we had a campaign in 2008 in which we had an historic and aspirational figure running for president. I was at Memphis, in Memphis last year at Rhodes College, and I said this was an historic election that Barack Obama won. And some kid asked me, why do you say it's historic? And I said, because we're here in Rhodes College in Memphis, Tennessee, and 3 miles away from here, in the lifetimes of people in this room, Martin Luther King was gunned down by a single bigoted marksman, because Martin Luther King had the temerity, the courage to stand up for the right of every American, black and white, man and woman in the United States of America to be able to register and vote in the South. And in our lifetimes, we elected an African American president. It says something good about our country that we did that. And we did it because people thought he was something different than what he turned out to be. He sounded during the campaign like he was a centrist. He said, don't want to be the president of red states or blue states, I want to be the president of the United States. He sounded like a fiscal conservative. He said, quote, I will scrub the budget line by line and end government programs that do not work. He criticized the deficits of the Bush years, which we ran 2.1% of GDP, slightly above the post-World War II average of 1.6% of GDP. And he sounded like he was criticizing them because he thought they were too large. He sounded like a tax cutter. I'm going to cut taxes for everybody who makes less than $250,000 a year. In fact, if you look at every speech he gave between June and November, for every 4 words that he devotes to cutting taxes, he gives 1 word to raising taxes, and generally to say, I'll quote, return tax rates to the way they were under Bill Clinton. Not exactly a stirring call to tax the rich. In fact, in the most widely watched campaign speech of the entire campaign, general election campaign, his Denver acceptance speech delivered right over here at the stadium, he never said a single word in that entire speech about raising taxes. And yet when he got into office, we saw something incredibly different in 5 big areas. And the first was when it came to the issue of the stimulus. I thought it was pretty smart to say we need to stimulate the economy, because we did need to get the economy going again. But he took a philosophical path that is sterile and ends in a dead end. He said what we need to do to stimulate the economy is we need to have the government spend money in order to create demand, and so let's go out and have Congress write an $814 billion stimulus bill. They started out $787 billion, but when the CBO finally, several months after they passed the bill, figured out its true cost, it turns out to be $814 billion. How's that working out? How do we judge it? I say we judge it by the president's own measure. He said several things. He said the money's going to get spent right away. 90% of the jobs are beginning to be created in the private sector. And this is going to generate unemployment. It's going to cause unemployment to cap out at 8% by the end of the summer of 2009 and decline thereafter. In fact, in a little document put out 11 days before he took office, signed by Christine Romer, the incoming chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors, and Jared Bernstein, Vice President-elect Joe Biden's economic advisor, they said, if we do nothing, unemployment will rise to nearly 10% and remain persistently high above 9% throughout the balance of 2009 and throughout 2010. Guess what? We're getting the performance that they promised if we did nothing. We did what they told us to do. They passed their bill, they put it into action, and as a result, we've got $1 trillion, $814 billion in spending, and more in interest that drives the total cost over the next 10 years to above $1 trillion, and we're getting the performance they said we would get if we did nothing. That was a pretty expensive lesson in how the theory that the government can spend money to create wealth simply doesn't work. In fact, you know what? It's explicit. This document that I referred to, you can find it on the internet, incidentally. Just enter in Romer, Bernstein, January 9th, 2009, and it'll pop up. The internet, what a fantastic invention. Thank you, Al Gore. Thank you so much. It's a fantastic creation. Come on, you've got to admit it's better than that other thing he invented. Global warming. But you go read that document in the appendix. Look, I'm a recovering government bureaucrat, I admit it. I was on the government payroll. I'm Carl, I'm a recovering government bureaucrat. There's no Betty Ford Clinic for us. So I read this stuff. And I learned you read the footnotes, you look at the charts, and by all means, read the appendices. Appendix 1, it's a cute little chart. It lists out how much economic growth there's going to be for every dollar expended by the government. And what they say is this, that for every dollar that was spent to be spent under the stimulus bill, there will be $1.55 in economic growth. Think about that for a minute. If that's the case, why do we stop at $814 billion? We should have done like the $10 trillion stimulus bill. We would have had $15 trillion in economic growth, and we could have thrown one heck of a good party on the $5 trillion that government created mysteriously and magically by spending our money willy-nilly. Oh, it was going to be spent right away, except we're going to spend more money between 2011 and 2019 than we spent last year when we were trying to stimulate the economy. Oh, it was going to go to shovel-ready projects. Sounded pretty good. I'm sort of a road and bridge guy. If you're going to spend money, you build a bridge, build a road, you got something to drive on or live under.